Hey everyone, this is Nitro. So in this video, I am going to be finally doing some of my match reviews of the new strategy I was running for Apex Arena, where I finally decided to follow the path that, let's say, Bakura and B-Guy took, and mostly abandon my healers. I no longer bring Rozenciel, I no longer bring Liana. I do keep Florentia, but that's because Florentia is more like a combination of healing with an AoE attack. So she is, I suppose, a healer, but she's in there because she can do like what Licorice does. She can heal as well as attack. And the fact that she can provide an act again to an ally is huge. So this is the box that I'm running, and it's worked out shockingly well. Right? Taking a look at my recent battle results, for example, since I switched to it, there was a win, 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 a loss here, and this loss, as a side note, was to pretty much an identical strategy to me, just different characters for AoE attack, a win, another win, and a win. So, and I think this, I'm not even sure if this win as well was using the AoE box or not entirely sure, but it just shows that the adjustment to this assault strategy worked out really, really well. The other thing about this is, looking at it, there's a whole bunch of characters who are not 6 stars. For example, Hobo is 5 stars. Right? Well, Vincent, of course, is 5 stars because I never 6-starred him. But Werner is actually 4 stars right now for me. And this still worked out really, really well, despite everything. So, yeah. Today's review is going to be going over this. And now, before I get started in the review, I just want to double check and make sure the chat is actually working. I seem to consistently have problems with chat, so just going to type a little message in the chat, make sure it works before I get started with the match reviews. So just give me a moment to get that test up and running. Okay, someone else typed it out. Perfect. It's working for once. How rare. Alright. Yes, this is live. Okay, so let's begin. Wow. I guess, oh yeah, and before that I was experimenting, so I took an insane number of losses, right? Here's a loss, 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 loss. Okay, so I'm not going to bother streaming those. As I said, I was experimenting and changing my box around over and over again, and eventually settled on this. Alright, let's take a look at this one against KY first. I'm not even sure if this is a AoE box run or not. Let's see. It was! Okay, fair enough. So yes, I am using this AoE box for this match as well. So taking a look at what KY is running, very, very single target oriented. In fact, there is Wataru in here, right? A Yeeless Legends, more single target oriented box, right? There's Alfred, because Alfred picked up a bunch of new skills and so on, right? Claret, Wataru. So primarily Yeeless Legends, Sigma as well. There's Zerida in here, but yeah, it's overall pretty interesting. It's Yeeless Legends with Meteor Faction. That's what this is. So let's see. So I start off with my standard Rozenciel ban, right? I mean, if I'm running an AoE team, Rozenciel is a must ban. And KY banned my Hilda right off. So he picks Zerida, and I choose to ban Landius and Jugler. So get rid of both tanks, because why not? So I play Jugler. He now bans LoliJess and Ares, and plays his Ares. Alright. So Omega Sigma ban, and I play Akaya second. Let's see, I lose Florentia and Hobo, and KY plays Iris. So no tank, but he plays Iris for the teleportation. Right? The whole point of Iris here is to allow other characters to maneuver forward to attack. So SP Elwin and Deedlit ban, and I play Zerida. It was a very odd pick ban in a lot of ways. Okay. So now I lost Himiko and Bernhard. He plays Wataru. I get rid of Claret and Himiko, playing Bozel. And he has the choice between Liana and Alfred. So I lose my Vincent as well as Kruger, the two fairly recent characters. He plays Alfred, and I am left with Werner and Licorice. So given I already have Akaya, it's pretty clear who I'm going to play. Right? A last pick Licorice. It was, like I said, like I have Zerida for faction buffing potentially on Jugler. I have Bozel and Licorice, so 3 dark characters. I have Akaya to mobility buff everyone. And on his side, he has 4 single target damage dealers basically. Ares, Zerida, Wataru, and Alfred, with Iris to teleport forward and provide some healing. So, Meteor faction buff actually affects Alfred as a side note. Right? And Alfred has that new 3C skill of his, High Seas, which allows him to, if he hasn't attacked, he's considered in water. And then being in water would then activate his talent of having 5 chances to mitigate mobility reduction, meaning he gets to move 8 tiles in total as long as he's in water. And since his High Seas puts him in water, it works out pretty well for him. So he's a pretty high mobility character. And since his High C skill is a 1.6 times damage skill, it just combos out really, really well. He basically ends up with 2 single target strike skills and Crush, which increases his attack further. Surprisingly decent, assuming you have Lizardman built up. His soldier choice is pretty limited. On my side, yeah, Bozel has the faction buff with Sleep and Black Hole. Licorice has her usual, Mass Seal, Demonic Event, Dark Despair. Akaya is here for mobility buffing and wild power. And Zerida is bringing her faction buff as well, just in case that Jugler can benefit from it. Right away, he teleports Wataru forward, getting ready to attack me, because Wataru has that displacement effect skill that allows him to act again and so on. So, yeah. I probably make a mistake here. Instead of moving Zerida forward here to block, right? I chose to move her back. Like, I could have blocked this tile off and prevented Wataru from moving in to attack my characters in the back. But instead I moved Zerida back to faction buff. So, he uses the Phoenix Fang Blast right next to my Jugler, right? Triggering the act again to move forward further. And then, here's a chance with Taru, and then the attack, which takes out Bozel right away. So, Wataru does have 2 mobility skills pretty much, right? The Phoenix Blast, which moves 3, and then the Here's Your Chance Wataru that allows him to move 2 more. So, by triggering multiple skills like that, he was able to choose the target he wanted to kill, and he chose Bozel, the faction buff for Licorice. I tried to have Licorice single target strike. I kind of know what Wataru is capable of, but not fully. And I started by single target striking Wataru, and he actually counterattacks against me. I think that's part of his talent, right? When hit points is 100% and you're forced into battle by a range attack, you take reduced damage and you counterattack. So if you actually want to kill him, you have to actually weaken him first before doing a range attack. Kind of annoying. In any case though. So end result, Licorice didn't do all that much damage to Wataru and took a lot of counterattack damage. And ultimately, 3 different attacks could not kill Wataru. because the first attack from Licorice ended up doing basically nothing, right? And as a result, Wataru talent actually provides healing as well. At the start of turn, restore 60% of units' hit points. So, because it survived, it got to heal up a whole bunch. But the thing is, I am acting first because Wataru killed off Bozo before I moved to Bozo. So I have 4 characters left, and I am moving first. And I decide to start things off with Licorice kind of self-healing with the Dark Despair and doing some damage. Which was important because it provided me basically enough survivability to tank that second hit from Wataru. Now a huge part of this as well is because Wataru, after attacking with the 3C skill, does have the depletion effect. And depletion does reduce the damage dealt by 30%. So a whole bunch of little factors kicking in here. You know, Licorice getting just enough healing to survive against this damaged Wataru. And so Wataru, since it doesn't kill my Licorice, I'm in a fairly good position. Although I am worried about Ares jumping in with the Wind Whisper now. And here, just taking a look at Alfred, since it moved without attacking, we can see it has that 8 mobility that I mentioned, right? It can move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So surprisingly high mobility on Alfred. So I just decide to have Jugler Sacred Beast him back. And annoyingly enough, that Sacred Beast him didn't kill Wataru either. He is just monstrously tanking a lot of hits. Because he does have pretty high defense, to be fair. So, that teleport could not kill Wataru still. It's been 2 turns now where I've just been completely failing against Wataru. So, finally, Akaya jumps in and finishes it off. Now, I am holding really far back. And Zerida maneuvers up and uses her Alhazard Bloodthirster. No one really in range. On my side, I do the same thing with my Zerida, not in range either. You know, neither of us kicked in with the Breeze effect, so both sides are far back. Ares does what's expected, jumps in, Wind Whisper, bam, down goes Licorice, who is heavily damaged. But the AoEs don't really do all that much due to healing from Jugler. At the very least, my characters are kept healthy. Interestingly enough, it did teleport my Zerida forward, so Zerida now has an opportunity to attack. Alfred though, the teleport forward though, also put my characters in range of Alfred. The 8 mobility Alfred gets to charge in and attack. So, he jumps in. Jugler tanks the hit. Beast mode Jugler as always. And I have to pick who to kill with Zerida. Ultimately, I decided that the best option is to take down Ares. There was a bit of luck there as well, side note. If Akaya had ended up here instead of the Wolf Soul, then their Zerida could take out my Akaya, right? If both characters got teleported here. But because of the way I got teleported, I'm able to actually have everyone move back to safety so that the enemy Zerida has no one to really attack. So, bonus there. So, Alfred, follow-up second strike. And the follow-up second strike, also, Alfred gets to retreat back like crazy. Okay? So, the retreat back part is not inherently part of Alfred's effect. It is the fact that Alfred has Zerida's faction buff. The faction buff allows you to move 2 blocks after defeating an enemy. But he gets to move way more because he has all those additional stacks of mitigate mobility reduction effects. So since he's in water, all those mitigate mobility reduction effects kick in, and thus he can move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Due to having those mitigate mobility reduction part. So, not only does he get to attack, right? He gets to retreat. Oh, actually, sorry. No, it might actually be a part of high seas. Another look at it. If remaining mobility is not 0, can move again after attacking. That might actually be it. Looking at it now. That's why he has that extra mobility. So he moves 2, right? Then he still has 6 mobility after the attack, and plus he can move back to 6. 2, 4, 6, yeah. So, interesting part about how Alfred works. Right? So he was able to retreat really, really far with that Alfred. 3 against 2. So, time to have Akaya trigger Beastal Outbreak to act again, Zerida, and summon a new Wolf Soul. So, I can only hold back and continue to trigger Alhazard Bloodthirster due to the enemy Zerida being there. I can't attack yet, otherwise the enemy Zerida would kill my Zerida. But, after that turn, I can attack. Because he no longer has the Killing Blow skill. Right? So, I wasn't too afraid of a damaged Zerida in that sense. He does outrange me, and he does have the ability to attack me right now. So, time to Wild Power up. Right. Faction buff is down. At long last, I trigger Wild Power. Zerida comes in though, and takes me out. So, 2 against 1. Akaya rushes in. Fortunately, was able to do enough damage to take it down. To damage Zerida. So it's now Akka with a Wolf Soul against Iris, who actually has the amazing Jean-Paul providing healing. So, attack, take a lot of damage, counterattack, twice. Now, this is interesting. I honestly thought that with this damaged Iris, because Iris can heal up from Amazing Jean-Paul, she could probably range attack and kill my Akka, then heal from Amazing Jean-Paul, and probably take down my Wolf Soul. Right. KY, though, for whatever reason, decides to self-heal to full, like this. Alright, so Amazing Jean-Paul is wearing off. So I keep attacking. He keeps self-healing for whatever reason, and he ends up giving me the win because of this. I really do think if he had attacked me, I would have lost. But he chose to try to self-heal over and over again and gave me the win. It was interesting. I mean, but it just shows, you know. Would have been close though. Like, whether my Wolf Soul could have one-shotted a damaged Licorice would have been interesting. Yeah, it would have been hard to see. Like, I'm not entirely sure. It could have been the damage numbers, as Noctis said. You know, it's very possible that my Wolf Soul would have killed the damaged, the heavily damaged Iris anyways. But it would have given more chance of beating me than him self-healing like that. At the very least. The other factor, though, was I seriously made a mistake in soldier choice on Akka. Like, if Akaya had werewolves instead of spider demons, I would have been way better off. Right? The spider demons are meant for when you bring Dark Reaper. Because then Dark Reaper gives Akaya 2 range, and the spider demons would also have 2 range. The werewolves are meant for when you don't bring that skill, because the werewolves would self-heal and so on. Right? After combat, they restore 20% of soldier hit points and so forth. So I definitely made a mistake there. with the soldier choice made that way closer than it needed to be. Because spider demons fighting at one range are doing basically no damage. But yeah, there was a... If I had the spider demons, it was guaranteed for me to win. As it was, I actually feel he should have won. Anyways. So that was the first one. This one against Olivo, I wrote skip, so I guess I will. Well, I'll take a quick look at why I wrote skip. Ah, I wrote skip. I have no idea why I wrote skip on this one. Looking at it. Let's take a look. I'm not gonna go over the pick ban. Bernhard, Sigma, Shafaniel, Mariel, and Hilda. Yeah, why did I write skip on this? Oh, well, let's take a look. Well, I got the same team as the previous match. You know, Bozo with Licorice, Zerida here with Jugler, and then Akaya. My opponent has a mixture of assassins and a stunning Bernhard with a Shafaniel for AoE. But, yeah. Let's see what happens here. Oh, I think I know why I wrote skip. So, let me just go back a little bit. First, I set up my characters very aggressively, right? With Licorice on one side and Bozo on the other, on the front line. Zerida could hang further back because she has setup time. And Akaya is in the far back because she can move up and mobility buff the other characters. So, my opponent has been shifting forward. I've also been doing the same, have not moved Licorice yet, and then I finally have Akaya trigger Blood of the Sheikah to summon the wolf, and then +2 mobility my party by triggering wild power. So with that mobility buffing, Licorice has pretty good mobility now. 5 mobility to actually hit most of the enemies who are actually in range. So, fly forward, demonic event, dark despair. Couldn't hit everyone, but I hit the front 3. And I trigger clocks. So, got a mobility debuff on Shafaniel. And the really nice thing about this as well is because of these water tiles here, none of the enemies can actually get in range to attack me. Alright? So, I'm still behind the river here, meaning none of them can get into range to actually physically attack Licorice, who just AoE'd. And, oh, this is exactly why I said skip on this, because Olivo just gave up here. Before the rest of my AoEs, came into effect or anything like that, he just gave up. Which is fair. I mean, I had 4 more AoEs ready for use. Or sorry, right? Yeah, 4 more AoEs ready for use. Bozo, Licorice again with Dark Despair. Jugler to jump in. Zerida could have assassinated someone. So he just said, screw it. I got hit by a massive AoE. I can't do much against it. I give up. I like fast matches like that. Good evening. Evening air. It worked last season. Doesn't work this season. It's too easy to make Ledin unable to revive, so they don't have much survivability. So the third battle against DrkAlley, this was a full Empire box, basically. Okay. I mean, there were a few characters that weren't Empire, but the goal of this box is clearly Empire. Right? Rozenciel, Elwin, Ares, Clotaire, Leon, Florentia, Hein, Bernhard, Hilda. Right? Those are all Empire. He does have a few that aren't. Right? Julia, for example, is not Empire. Liana is not Empire. Jugler's not Empire. Bozel's not Empire. But on the whole, this is very clearly oriented towards becoming an Empire box. There's also Zerida here. So, usual pick ban. Rozenciel ban. He plays Bernhard first. Okay. So, get rid of the two tanks, Jugler and Hilda. And I play LoliJess to start. So, it was interesting, yeah. So he banned my Florentia first, my soul healer. So I now lose Ares and Licorice. He plays Clotaire. So I ban his Florentia and Ares, playing Hilda on my side. Jugler and Kruger ban. He plays Hein. So, SP Elwin, Liana ban now. And I'm going to play Akaya. Not sure why I banned SP Elwin. Looking at that now. But yeah, anyways. Vincent and Zerida, and on my side. Enemy plays Leon. So. I now get rid of Landius. Oh! He has 3 tanks. Landius, Jugler, and Hilda. I somehow missed Landius. Anyways. Leaving him with Julia and Zerida. On my side, I now play Hobo. A very late Akaya pick as a side note. Right. So I lose Bernhard and Bozel. He plays Zerida as the final character, and I play Himiko as my final choice. Right. No reason to play Werner if I already have Akaya. SP Roga incoming. Yeah, Roga deserves better. So he is very clearly going full aggro, right? Getting characters maneuvering forward, right? Everyone pushing forward as far as they can. That's why I initially moved back, although I decided to place Hobo in front. The reason for the Hobo in front is shown shortly. First, mobility buff everyone with Akaya. And this is why. LoliJess teleport forward, in front of Hobo, get to act again, and then strike and kill Leon so that Leon never got to attack. Honestly, my original intent was to strike and kill Bernhard, but if he gives me the opportunity to kill off his character who has not acted, might as well go for that. And block off the road so that Clotaire can't really move forward as well. And then finally, with the mobility buff, Himiko can come rushing forward, launch out her truly ridiculous skill, her 3C, heavily damage all 3 enemies, mobility debuff them, right? Mobility debuff, and mobility debuff. It's -1 to 3 mobility, but they all got hit with -2 here. So they took a lot of damage, all got mobility debuffed, and she stole a whole bunch of buffs too from that. Right? So Zerida melee attacks my Light of Genesis, taking her down. So this is clearly a Zerida that does not have the Crystal Stinger, and instead has the Extreme Magic Bow. And she gets mobility debuff with -3 mobility, so she can't move after that kill. Let's go with Lightning Shuriken again, since clock triggered on it. Second use. Clotaire falls without ever getting to act. Bernhard gets some more mobility debuffs, I think. -3 this time, so he can't even attack. Yep. And it also hits Hein, who gets -3 mobility as well. That nasty sword dance. So I just have Akaya now jump in with the act again, which teleports my Himiko to safety. Right? Now Hein can't AoE finish Himiko. So Akaya, it's not just the mobility buff that makes her good, it's also the fact that she can provide the act again or single target strike as required. So Hein comes moving up. Ultimate Magister, which I expected. Only hits 2 characters though. Let's just have an AoE from Hobo. Zerida and Bernhard both killed by that one. Quick retreat. Battle done. So, there we go. 2 battles that both took 2 turns with this new AoE assault strategy. Nice and fast. No need to, one of the biggest appeals of this strategy is definitely the fact that battles end fast. In general, the battles just, AoE, bam, 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 you either win or lose. Yep. Once you hit 3 or 4, it's generally over. And Himiko is pretty cancerous, I have to say. I mean, my Himiko is not even 6 stars yet. She is 5 stars, and she's being a beast. Right? 5 stars. So, beast mode. So, battle number 3. And an interesting box. Is this the one that I lost? Let me just go back out. Come on. This might be the one that I lost. No, never mind. Oh, I remember. I think I lost to him before in a previous video, right? To the Emmerich. Because Emmerich has a 3C now. But yeah, another fairly surprisingly heavy on Empire characters box. I mean, it's no surprise if everyone's running Bernhard and Bernhard has an Empire faction buff. Makes sense to bring a whole bunch of Empire characters, really. Between Bernhard and Rozenciel for Empire buffs. So there is an Emmerich, there is an Iris. Right? Teleport forward an Emmerich for whatever he does. There's a lot of single target strikers to combo with that, right? Because Emmerich can disable guard, and that would allow the single target strikers to actually hit the targets that they want. Right. Surprisingly, there is the Albedo. Right. I mean, Albedo was really, really good last season, so I imagine a lot of people who built her will continue to use her. But yeah. So, single target oriented box with Iris and Florentia for mobility buffing. And I guess LoliJess. So the ban phase, as always. I lost Himiko first ban here, right? A lot of people seem to be banning the highest damage threats rather than the other characters. So the pick ban options for a lot of people, it's still not solidified, right? Since I'm running an AoE box, it's pretty obvious, right? Rozenciel. But for single target oriented boxes, it's not as straightforward. So I played Jugler first, and he gets rid of Bernhard and Kruger. I mean, Kruger is pretty annoying with ability to prevent healing and all that stuff. Same with Bernhard. In fact, Bernhard can single targets kill so many characters, it's not a bad choice to ban him first. So both sides play Jugler. I get rid of Mariel and LoliJess now, playing my LoliJess. Ares and Bozoban. And he plays Hilda. Double tank. So Hilda, Florentia and Bernhardt now. And I play Zerida. So I lose Florentia and Licorice. He plays Liana. So 2 tanks and a healer for him. So Zerida, Sigma. Let's get rid of the assassins. Playing Hobo on my side. So Hobo would buff up Zerida and Jugler. I now lose Hilda and Akaya, leaving me Vincent and Werner. He plays SP Elwin. I get rid of Emmerich and Hobo, leaving him with just either Albedo or Iris, right? So he only has 1 damage dealer, Elwin. I play Werner. He plays Iris. Yeah, I mean, Emmerich is interesting with the ability to give that aura, right? The command aura to disable guard and so on. But I still don't consider him a major threat, all things considered. So, initial maneuvering. I remember I didn't play this very well, because this is like my first ever match using Werner. And I knew that for this match, it really came down to, as long as I kill SP Elwin, I win. That's pretty much it. Oh, side note. Notice the stone colossi on Jugler. Okay. Because I knew SP Elwin was here, so I'm like, stone colossi, you know? Countered the only damage dealer he has. So I teleported Werner forward, but it wasn't really a great move, all things considered. I should have more carefully calculated like who Werner can attack and so on. Because, for example, if I look at this, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's not far enough for Werner to actually get an ignore guard strike on Iris. And in the first place, I don't think Werner can actually go through the 50% damage reduction bolt rangers. Right. If I teleport him here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Then I could have ignored guard hit. But once again, it did force him to move forward a little bit, so it is what it is. Alright, so finally, Tenquin takes the first action. Jumping with Jugler, now that I've wasted my Light of Genesis teleport. Because now Light of Genesis can't teleport back to strike. But in response, that was a bait move on purpose, because I knew Sage of Decrees can Wave Whisper, knock Jugler away, and free up my Light of Genesis. And due to these Dazzling Light tiles, Jugler's crappy mobility doesn't allow him to get back into range to actually strike. So the bait worked. So let's have Light of Genesis, strike Elwin, take off her first life. Right. My priority is still to take down Elwin at the end of the day. Jugler's not too big of a threat. Elwin though, as long as Elwin is dead, I win. So also taking advantage of the Dazzling Light tile, I first move here, attack, then retreat back a little. So I'm still out of range of Jugler. So he decides to have Elwin now come charging in, and the clutch stone colossi take absolutely no damage whatsoever. Shall we take a quick look at that again? So, Stone Colossi, they are above 70% hit points, very clearly. So they're not getting the 30% damage reduction effect. But, I mean, Lancers against Cavalry, the damage reduction is insane. Take absolutely no damage. And so Zerida gets an easy finish on Elwin's remaining life. So, the sole damage dealer of Tenquin is gone. Well, to be fair, there is still, I suppose, Jugler. So, and Jugler gets teleported forward for round 2. Because his goal is still to have Jugler launch out a Beast Shock to kill off my Jugler. So, let's quickly teleport my Jugler away. I don't care if someone else dies. The key here is to make sure my Jugler still lives. And the advantage of that teleport is, right now, he can attack, but the only character he can attack is Hobo. So why don't I have Hobo attack, do a bit of damage to this Jugler, and while doing that, it also stripped the buff from this Jugler. Not sure what was removed, didn't really matter anyways, it wasn't one of the key buffs. He's still in water, he still takes physical damage for allies, all that good stuff. Amazing Jean-Paul. Provides a bit of healing. Beast Shock on the only character he can attack. Sage of the Trees is killed for the first life. And it's my turn to jump forward. He attacked in a position where I could have my Jugler jump up and block off both characters. Because Hilda does not have the ram skill, both characters can't guard right now. So he's healing up, trying to stay healthy. In the meantime, I'll wipe out Jugler, forcing it into a 5v3. He gives up very quickly. What was that Werner mob? Are you talking about the Werner sound effect? If that's what you're referring to, it's Werner's unique, it's Werner's talent. It's the one that gives mobility buffs to allies. Werner always plays that sound effect whenever Mechanical Commander kicks in, providing allies with 1 mobility and the Guerrilla skill, so that they can move through defensive terrain. So you can kind of think of Werner as providing 2 mobility. That's more or less it. As long as there's even 1 tile of terrain, it's a 2 mobility buff. Yeah. Vroom vroom skill. That one ended up being more of a showcase of LoliJess than anything else, right? Because I didn't even bring Akaya here. I did bring Werner, but ultimately it was more just force my opponent to come in and then slowly wipe it out. Ah, the next battle is the one that I lost against Syrup. And Syrup has essentially the same concept kind of box. Doesn't have Werner, but does have Clotaire. It's basically all AoE characters if you look at this, right? Except for, I guess, SP Elwin. There is Akaya, Ares, Clotaire, Joshua, Vincent, Himiko, Arianrod, Reen, Sakura, Jugler, Rainforce 2.0. So, all AoE attackers. the tanks he's using is Freya and Jugler, Origins of Light tanks, which was interesting to see. And then there is SP Elwin here for a single target attacker. I mean, I use Zerida as my single target attacker, so it's not like it's wrong to have a single target striker in an AoE box. Sometimes you need someone to clean up. So he started off by banning my Jugler, I started off by banning his Rozenciel, I play my LoliJess, and I lose Akaya and Vincent right away. On his side, he plays Akaya right off the bat. So, LoliJess Jugler ban, I play Ares. Florentia and Langrisser are now banned, and he plays Clotaire. Oh, this one's gonna be short. I remember now. I messed up big time. So Akaya followed by Clotaire. I get rid of Reen and Ares playing Hobo. Lose the tank, lose Bernhard. Himiko shows up. Vincent, Reinforce 2.0. Himiko on my both teams. Now I finally lose Werner and Clotaire. He plays Joshua. I get rid of SP Elwin and Sakura and play my Zerida, leaving him the choice between Freya and Area and Rod, and he chooses to play Freya rather than Area and Rod. That was kind of weird, that final choice. So this is the positioning is where I made the mistake, to be honest. So I start by moving up. He starts with Akaya, of course, and mobility buffing the whole team. And I have Zerida, Heart of Alhazard. Yep. And this is the problem. This is exactly what the most just said earlier, right? He gets to charge up and hit my whole team with the AoE. And look at that. The damage basically just wiped out everyone in one AoE. 2700, 1590, you know, 1950, 1649. There is that fixed damage hit coming, right? There are ways I could have avoided it, right? It was the positioning that was the huge issue. If I had placed these characters further back in, because you can position further back, and had Clotaire, and had the characters in front block, I could have avoided quite a bit of that damage. But by not really properly blocking Clotaire, and him getting the mobility buff from Akaya, he could just charge forward, activate both mobility skills, and then launch out the AoE. So once again, right? This is clearly a Twilight Star Clotaire. So it has 5 movement, so it runs forward 5. First mobility action, 2 more. Second mobility action, 2 more, so that's 9 movements. And then the flare. Right? And the flare hits 5 tiles. If I had placed my characters here on the back row, and he moved all the way here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. So I think with that I could have avoided it. I think it's a 3x5, not a 3x6. Not quite sure though, but I believe it's a 3x5 attack rather than a 3x6 attack. So yeah, if I had placed 3 characters in the row in the very back, would have been okay. With the way I placed them, not okay. Nonetheless, I tried to have Light of Genesis strike, Wind Wall triggered, and yeah, because of the fixed damage, dead Light of Genesis. She did provide some healing to my other characters before she dies though. this is where I make another mistake. Himiko launches up the Lightning Shuriken. And then there Himiko gets the counter with the same skill by charging forward like this, taking out both my characters. Alright. But at the very least, Hobo's death did provide some healing. Oh yes, Hobo did not revive there because Clotaire's effect unable to trigger effects that resist fatal damage. Alright. So that's why Clotaire also died. Or sorry, that's why Sage of the Trees died without reviving. So 2 AoEs, characters are wiped out. There is Zerida and Ares left. Ares at least finishes off the enemy Clotaire, I suppose. Not really a good situation regardless. Joshua charge forward. I have Zerida wipe it out. It's 2 against 3. And he does the action of using Sacred Cow to push my Zerida into range of the other enemies. So, Zerida gets struck and killed. And now all that's left is Ares against 3. So he's just mopping up at this point, right? I was hoping he might not have an Extreme Magic Bow on the Himiko, but he did, so rip there. The only chance I had there was if he didn't have the Extreme Magic Bow. If Ares killed Himiko, then I have my possible Wind Whisper to heavily damage the enemies. Maybe could have pulled something off. As it was, no chance. So yeah. Clotaire is wet in certain situations, he wins you games, for sure. In other situations, he's fairly ineffective. It's fairly difficult to get him into range properly and not have the enemy be able to dispel or heal. Like, Rozenciel is a guaranteed really hard counter to Clotaire. Liana does actually quite well in countering Clotaire too, especially if you have the Summon Sky Archer. So there are ways to counter Clotaire, but the AoE damage he throws out is quite terrifying, that's for sure. Ultimately though, it was the combo of Akaya with Clotaire that did that. Clotaire alone would not have been that threatening. So, the next battle... Crystal Stinger Himiko. Makes no sense. It really doesn't. I mean, she does have assassination skills, but still doesn't make sense. So against Pong, typical box. That's about it, right? Some AoEs, some single targets, whole bunch of meta characters, not too much to say about it. Mythical oriented with both Gizaroth and Hobo. Yeah. Jugler ban, Rozenciel ban. I play LoliJess to start still. Losing Akaya and Hilda next. Enemy plays Hilda. I get rid of LoliJess and Florentia now. Playing my Bernhard. So then... Werner now is banned along with Ares, right? Yeah. So I've lost most of my mobility buffs, leaving with just LoliJess as the main mobility buffer. Pong plays Deedlit, losing SP Elwin and Liana, and I play Himiko next. So Florentia, Licorice ban, makes a lot of sense there. Enemy plays Jugler, right? Double tank. Ariane Rod Ares ban, and I play Kruger. So that leaves me Zerida, Bozel, Vincent, as well as Hobo as my remaining choices. So he goes for Bozel and Zerida, playing Kruger on his side as well. So I have the choice between Hobo and Vincent. Hobo could buff up Kruger. Vincent will get faction buffed by Bernhard. I get rid of his Bernhard and Hobo, and on my side, I choose to play Vincent. So, ending phase, Gizeroff as the final character. So I basically have 4 AoEs with a teleporter and single target strike dealer. He has pretty much 3 AoEs, an extra tank, and Deedlit for healing. Both sides applying the Kruger effect to start. And here's some maneuvering forward while he is just holding back. Obviously, since I have the assault team without a tank, I'm the one that's more responsible for pushing. But I just choose to play it patient for now. Here we go! Himiko sees the opportunity. Kabam! This, I knew that it would get healed up, so this was completely more for debuffing. So, Jugler got mobility debuff. Deedlit got 1 ninjutsu debuff. Hilda has a whole bunch now. And Kruger got mobility debuffed as well. -3, can't move. This removes one of those debuffs, and Deedlit gets silenced. Right. He moves up here, was probably hoping for an extra, breeze effect to maybe attack Vincent, but instead got silenced by the ninjutsu debuff. So all she can do really at that point was move back. Vincent charges up, takes out that construct, right? Taking the opportunity to get rid of the construct so that Gizeroff doesn't get to use the ultimate construct effect. So he's mostly useless right now. Might as well have Dark Ward get used, and then launch out another AoE to debuff. I know that these AoEs will not do damage due to Jugler. I am using them to debuff over and over again. And it's working out pretty well. And now, teleport LoliJess up. This was my mistake. I didn't realize that Hilda was actually guarding Jugler. So big mistake on my part there. I actually thought I had the mobility debuff on Hilda, but I didn't. So Hilda was guarding. The attack did take off Hilda's first life, but Light of Genesis took a huge damage hit there. And despite the 0 movement, due to having the Dark Ward, he was ultimately able to move up 1 with Kruger and launch out the AoE to damage my Himiko. So he is very clearly getting ready to have Jugler wipe out these characters. So, here we go. There's the teleport in. Boom. No one actually dies. So, barely survived with everybody. Right? 428 hit points on LoliJess. Himiko had a bunch more than that. Right? Because it was ultimately just... I did have Life Ward on Himiko. Right? The Life Ward tanked quite a bit of the damage from Kruger. And so it kept Himiko reasonably healthy. And so Himiko gets to launch out another AoE. Right? The clock triggered Lightning Shuriken gets hit it again. And once again, mobility debuffs on everyone. They can't move. Right? -3 mobility. -3 mobility. -3 mobility. You know? Himiko is seriously cancer. Even Dietlik got a mobility debuff of 3. But she did have Breeze trigger, so she could actually move a bit. So, all of them mobility debuffs, can't move. Can't even get into range to attack me, really. That's the whole point. He starts off with Master of Ice, taking out 2 characters. I couldn't care less. Vincent! Time to show off! Jump in with the 3C. Kaboom! AoE. Trigger Wings of Destruction. There we go. Kruger killed. Hilda killed. And the remaining 2 are heavily damaged. Right. Gizarov took a big hit. Dietlit took a big hit. So dead Kruger, which is what I really needed. And the key there was Jugler was baited out forward so that he couldn't provide the healing to when Vincent jumped in with that AoE. So this nearly dead Vincent with that one with 1398 hit points, getting to jump in with that big AoE. Gets to hammer down the heavily damaged enemies. With that double AoE. So the 3C is pretty nasty when used at the right time. Because the thing about this VC, the one thing about the 3C is, I believe you have to kill an enemy to trigger the second AoE, right? Or let me double check. Oh no! That would have been the Emerald Explosion. When you kill an enemy, you trigger Emerald Explosion again. This time it did double AoE because I think I killed myself, right? Wings of Destruction, upon death, deal another AoE hit. So because he was low hit points, when he did that, the self-damage triggered the Wings of Destruction effect. Yeah, double damage from dying. Yeah, I was mixing up skills. Emerald Explosion is 2 AoEs if you kill an enemy. Comet Storm is just self-damage, so you can trigger Wings of Destruction. Alright. So... there were some fixed damage effects on these enemies, but neither of them died to it. If I just go back a little, let's take a look. I'm taking a look to see what exactly was causing them both fixed damage a bit. I'm actually not sure. 5 stars. Yeah, I have no idea where that fixed damage is actually coming from. Maybe a ninjutsu debuff? Probably a ninjutsu debuff is my guess. So, meanwhile, Bernhard is just faction buffing in the far back. Deedlit jumps in to attack my Bernhard and provide healing. Right. So Vincent will quickly get rid of Gizerov. And my Kruger gets killed without getting to act. That's okay. Because Bernhard finally tosses out his sword dance, killing off Deedlit and damaging both Jugler and the Construct. So, Bernhard gets struck, and the werewolves start showing how ridiculously OP they are. I actually thought Bernhard would kill Jugler here. It didn't quite happen. And so Vincent now dies to a Construct. But it's now 1v1. Jugler against Bernhard. So, Jugler has no chance against Bernhard. Giving me the win. So, end of the day, the AoEs really came into effect in that fight. Right? Despite the initial AoEs doing basically no damage due to Jugler, afterwards, once Jugler was out of range, the AoEs really got to kick in. If he had kept hovering back, would have been much more difficult for me to pull something off, that's for sure. But at the same time, if he had kept hovering back, I could have probably wiped out Jugler whenever I wanted. Let Bernhard jump in, stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Mass debuffs constantly. He would have struggled in some ways, even if he had hung back. Of course, I can't deny that clocks kicking in on Himiko all the time really helped there, right? Getting to launch out 2 Lightning Shurikens with Himiko was big. Definitely big. But that's, once again, why Himiko is such cancer. She is really, really hard to deal with in that sense. RNG dependent, but there's so many RNG dependent AoE attackers at the end of the day. Licorice with Dark Despair, right? Hobo with his 3C. Bozel triggering clocks is a nightmare as well. The list goes on and on. Alright, 3 more battles to go. I honestly don't know what Rinkute runs. It's weird, like, why Tieris? I suppose he wants the attack blessing to guarantee a kill? I don't know. But Tieris really makes no sense to me. There's already Iris, right? So the Tieris makes no sense to me. The Wilder makes no real sense to me either. Liana, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of old school characters in his box, right? Rachel, just a lot of Yeles legends and reincarnation heroes, basically. But this is his box. Not much for me to comment on. But it's just weird to see both Liana and Tieris and Rachel all there. Alright, so since there's no Rozenciel, I banned Jugler first instead. And people are banning my Kruger first. He plays Hilda, so I'll get rid of LoliJess and Mariel and play Akaya this time. So Werner, Ares, Yulia. I'll get rid of Ares and SP Elwin, playing my Bernhard. Vincent and Florentia ban. Yeah, it does feel like it, McKaiser. I think I got clocks to activate pretty much every game I played Himiko. So, Rinkute plays Zerida now. So there hasn't really been any real matching faction buffs on his team. I've been kind of focusing on that in terms of my banning, right? So now I get rid of Sigma and Rachel. And play my Himiko once again. I actually don't know why people are not banning Himiko earlier. I mean, she is very, very, very nightmarish to fight against. Fairly easy to kill, perhaps, with AoEs, but a nightmare otherwise. In any case, Bozo Zerida ban. He is left with LoliJess and a whole bunch of healers. Right. So he plays Liana first. He already played a tank to start, so I had no interest in banning his healers and tanks. So I just get rid of more healers, Iris and Wilder. I play Jugler. He has a choice between LoliJess and Tiaris. And he bans my Hobo and Hilda. Plays Tiaris. I was very much expecting LoliJess to show up. He chose to play Tiaris. It is what it is. And he left me with LoliJess and Licorice. So, of those two, I chose to play LoliJess. So, I basically have both the ability to teleport characters around and massively mobility buff with Akaya. And I have 3 AoEs along with LoliJess for a single target strike. And there's the first mobility buff. The final pick between Licorice and LoliJess was actually pretty tough. I could not decide which one to go for. But because I saw he had multiple healers, Tiaris, Liana, and Yulia, I felt LoliJess was more important. So let's teleport Jugler forward. And then Sacred Beast him jump. I thought about it for a while and I decided to jump further away to stay out of Yulia's range to avoid Godly Menace. So, a very quick heal from Tiaris starts things off, and I have the jump in from Himiko. And for once, Himiko did not trigger clocks. Stole a lot of buffs though. This is the funny part. I stole Hilda's guard range buff. So now Himiko is a tank. Takes attacks for friendly units within 2 blocks. But yeah, stole a whole bunch of buffs. No complaints. He's probably pissed I stole that buff though. Next, Bernhard, Sword Dance. Yulia tries to kill Bernhard and is guarded by Himiko. So he got seriously trolled there. Totally 100% trolled. Right? He goes for the Godly Menace, and instead, it does nothing. Now, I make a mistake here. I beast shock attack Yulia to kill her. Probably should have killed Zerida, truthfully. But I chose to kill Yulia. So, Light of Genesis gets to move up, take out a target. And Beastal Outbreak to re-trigger and refresh Bernhard, who then goes after Hilda. I was actually expecting a one-shot there, but didn't get it. I really was expecting a one-shot there on Hilda, but let's see once again. It's because Bernhard somehow has less attack than he should. Oh, I know why. Okay, the reason this was not a one-shot was because Bernhard had Himiko's, or he had Akaya's buff of 30% attack. Alright. Let's just pause here for a sec. Yeah, I mean, Jugler dies as expected. That's about all I can say there. So, yes, but Bernhard had the plus 30% attack buff from Aka, the wild power effect. Right? So that replaced the faction buff 20%. And so it had worn off, and so Bernhard had less attack than he should. So be it. Whatever. Failed to get the kill on the Hilda as a result. But I get it now. At least the first kill. So. And then, because I didn't kill Zerida, Zerida got the opportunity to attack my Himiko. They kill each other. Both had extreme magic bow, right? So they fight in melee there, and they kill each other. And then LoliJess finishes off Hilda. So even though I didn't get the kill initially, Bernhard did get one kill, and then LoliJess got the second kill. So now it is Bernhard, LoliJess, Aka against Liana and Yulia. I teleported Bernhard back to avoid Yulia. And now I can still avoid Yulia because move back. And why don't I send the Wolf Soul forward to finish off Liana? So now it's 3 against 1. Yulia is now facing Bernhard, LoliJess, and Aka for a pretty easy win. And done. Yulia goes for an attack, actually kills himself into my Bernhard. PO spike. I don't know, I kind of like it. I mean, it did lead to a dead Himiko, but I was perfectly okay with that. But yeah. Totally trolled by Himiko. I just feel like Himiko is so cancerous. Whether it's the mobility debuffs or the buff stealing or, you know, all the things that she does is just nightmarish. Oh, side note. The buff stealing part is not inherent to her. It's from the Earth Elf Knights, like the Goblin Knights. Because upon landing a crit hit, afflicts the enemy with 1 strong debuff and steals 1 buff effect. Alright. SergeV decks. Surge? SergeV? I don't know. Let's see. So, for his box, just another typical meta box. I mean, there's not too much to say about it, right? There is teleporters in in Iris and LoliJess to maybe bring Yulia forward into play. There is Florentia for the mobility buff, but AoE mixed with single targets. More AoE oriented, I think. But then there is SP Elwin, Yulia, LoliJess. Right? So there are a bunch of single targets mixed in. And I guess Bernhard can be both single target and AoE as well. So this is actually, how a proper AoE single target mix should be, is what I feel. Because there's a lot of characters who can do both. Bernhard and Ares, for example, right? So, nope, no time to really focus on this well, first of all, this channel doesn't make enough money to hire an editor and stuff like that, right? So, unless you find someone that's willing to do it for free, and I find that kind of awkward. Anyways, so let's see what happens here. Rozenciel ban as always. Akaya bans first, right? First pick Akaya is pretty nightmarish, so he was smart. He banned my Akaya right away. And plays Hilda. So I'll get rid of LoliJess and Florentia and play my LoliJess. So Werner, Florentia ban. Iris for him. Jugler and Bernhard ban. Hilda for me. So Jugler and Bozel ban, and he plays Bozel. Alright, so I'll get rid of Reen and Ares and play Zerida. Right. This is why I put Zerida in my box, actually. So Vincent and Ares are now banned. He plays Kruger. I get rid of Yulia and Hobo. He is now left with just Liana and SP Elwin. I'll play Licorice, and I'm thinking he plays Liana. So Hobo, Kruger ban on my side, leaving me with Himiko and Bernhard. Once again, I don't understand it. People don't seem to think of Himiko as much of a threat. A last pick Himiko option. So finally he plays Liana as expected. On my side, I finally play Himiko. Right? Though Bernhard could have been played, but ultimately Hilda had to bring her faction buff no matter what, because she was buffing Licorice and LoliJess, and I felt just Himiko was a better option here. Bernhard was very viable too though. So, I start off with Zerida, Bloodthirster, right away. And then oh yes, the other thing is, I actually chose to bring Strengthen as well as Teleport on LoliJess, right? With Light's Embrace. So the whole point of this is, so LoliJess is not providing any kind of healing. The whole point was that I could have Zerida kill things, and I could also strengthen up Himiko. Although I didn't need it as well, because technically Zerida's faction buff does buff up Himiko. The main reason for that though was, my plan was to have Zerida be able to turn one kill an enemy. Instead of, because I knew Iris could teleport them forward as well. So I didn't feel I had 2 turns of setup time, and that was why I did that. Yeah, because that was the basic strategy there. Because I really knew that between Zerida having to both first faction buff, then Bloodthirster, he could have very easily teleported Bozo forward and then had Bozo AoE my team. So to avoid that, I decided to bring the Strengthen and have LoliJess ready to teleport the Strengthen Zerida to assassinate. So he did not teleport as a result, so it did kind of work. I teleport forward, and he accordingly teleports back with Bozo. Right? So by changing it up like that, it did prevent him from doing an early AoE assault and debuffing my whole team. Well worth it, in my opinion. In the meantime, might as well just Sacred Cow and knock back Kruger a lot. And funny enough, he got silenced. Right. Ninjutsu debuffs are such a pain. The RNG on them is brutal. Like, if you get something like this, cannot use active skills, suddenly your strategy collapses. Right. So instead of being able to AoE hit my Himiko, he's silenced. And Zerida just goes for the kill and moves back. So he does get off the AoE from Bozo, and it basically means Himiko's dead now. So between cannot heal yourself, mobility debuff, and poison, there's no way I can save Himiko. On the flip side though, Zerida at least was immune to silencing due to Strengthen, so she's able to move back. And I'll have her faction buff to start. So there's the AoE from Kruger, finishing off Himiko, not that he needed it. And then act again on Kruger to be ready to launch out AoEs. So there's Everdark Abyss to debuff, and my turn to get a bad AoE debuff effect. Right? He did manage to silence this time on my Zerida. So also my fault. I could have been out of range, but he did activate. He did get the +2 mobility buff. So, but if I had the option to place Zerida anywhere. I could have been out of range of that AoE. So I also misplaced there, which nearly lost me this fight, because now Zerida's debuffed and silenced. And I mess up as well here. My Zerida has her exclusive. If I had just placed her up here, the exclusive would kick in and remove a debuff. And it could have removed this cannot use active skills debuff. So I misplaced as well there. So 2 actions in a row where I screwed up with Zerida. He is maneuvering forward. I will launch out a Dark Despair. The debuffs I apply here is cannot be healed on Kruger and cannot be healed on Bozo. So, act again. Attack. Kruger's quickly taken down. Three against 4. Mass heal. And the silence was kept. See? So it really screwed up. That was a massive screw up. If I had placed Zerida up here, it would have removed one of the debuffs. And then this mass heal would have removed the second one, allowing my Zerida to activate Heart of Alhazard this turn. As it is, I'm still silenced. But I still do have a character advantage. As long as I can get Zerida into a position where she can activate Bloodthirster, I should be okay. And with that in mind, I teleport Zerida all the way up. Bozo silences or launches up the AoE to debuff my characters. Zerida, due to the teleport in front, is ready to finally trigger Bloodthirster. Meanwhile, he's triggering active gen effects and so on. More AoEs from Bozo. And he is moving Hilda to properly guard disposal. Meanwhile, Zerida at long last triggers the Heart of Alhazard, ready to assassinate. But it kind of turns out that I don't particularly need it. Well, first of all though, I do get rid of that Bozo because it was the biggest threat. And then I lock down Hilda where she is. So that she has nowhere to move. Because now he's in the poison on my side. He had no choice but to keep charging forward aggressively because he had to assassinate my Zerida. Or he had to debuff me to prevent my Zerida from assassinating his AoE attackers. Right? But now it led to a situation where he's in the poison on my side and there's no way out. So finally surrenders and retreats. Let's see. At least ninjutsu silence only lasts one turn, unlike the random ones from Black Hole. Yeah, the Black Hole ones last 2 turns, that's true. But yeah, that battle... Yep. LoliJess, I actually feel at the end of the day, the strengthen worked out pretty well for LoliJess. She didn't get many opportunities to attack anyways, right? And I wasn't expecting her to attack very often or provide healing since I had Licorice. So having both strengthen and teleport was an okay choice. At the very least, it was pretty important for the first turn because no matter what, I had to have Zerida be ready to assassinate on turn 1. I could not allow Bozo to assassinate my team. And then that led to a situation where he had to waste his teleport to get Bozo out of range. Right? In order to keep his Bozo alive, he had to teleport his Bozo back away from my LoliJess. Or away from my Zerida. So, worked out. The skill selection, the skill picking for that first match was crucial, I feel. And then the final battle against Fresh Prince. So Fresh Prince is one of those accounts that have like a million different drivers, right? I think his account is second, or it was the account that came in second last season. So I don't know who actually owns it or who is actually playing the account at any given time. It's just that it's a whale account. So his box has Albedo, Reen, 3 tanks, right? Albedo, Jugler, and Hilda. Right? And then everyone else is mostly meta. Reen, Kruger, LoliJess, Bozo, Licorice, Florentia, Bernhard, Hobo, and SP Elwin. Not sure why SP Elwin is in there, but he is. So Rozenciel ban, as always, he gets rid of my Akaya first. You'll notice all the really good players seem to ban Akaya first. Right? They really do not want to face off against a +2 mobility team that also has Akaya for act again purposes. So I play LoliJess first. He gets rid of Zerida and Jugler right after my Akaya and plays Jugler. Alright, I'll get rid of Bernhard and Reen, playing my Hilda. And I lose Ares and Murder. He plays Hilda next. So double tank, once again. Alright, LoliJess and Florentia ban. I'll play Florentia. So I ended up with LoliJess, Hilda, and Florentia. A very deadly combo, actually. Right? They're all faction buffing each other. So Vincent, Kruger ban. Fresh Prince plays Liana. Himiko and Bozo. Have to kind of get rid of those because I don't have any assassins to deal with Bozo and so on. Playing Licorice. So I lose Bozo and Himiko once again. He plays Kruger. I have a choice between Bernhard and Hobo. I'll get rid of the enemy Licorice and Hobo. So he has no faction buff for Jugler and Kruger. And on my side, I end up playing Bernhard, between Bernhard and Hobo. And this is one of those tough choices again, right? Hobo can push enemies. Bernhard has the higher damage output. And Sword Dance. And he plays SP Elwin last. So I'm not really playing an AoE box at all, right? I mean, there is some AoE, there is Licorice, and there is Bernhard, but I end up just switching Bernhard to Shield Bash, right? I'm really not expecting this to be an AoE assault team. Right? And so it's single target, really. Bernhard single target, Light of Genesis single target, there's Licorice, there is Florentia, right? And then there's Hilda. The interesting thing here is he chose to have Elwin run Mass Maids, with the goal of the Mass Maids killing off my Crystal Molders and so on. So, very interesting soldier choice. I've never seen this build before, and I wasn't expecting it. The other interesting factor is Jugler is bringing Master of Ice rather than Beast Shock, which was what I was expecting, a Beast Shock hit. But I suppose he figured he had Elwin for the single target kills, and then having 2 AoEs might have been better, right? The Kruger AoEs and the Jugler AoEs. So evil overwhelming as always. Debuffing my own team. Nothing new there. And he is using his Gospel to provide a buff to his Kruger. Darn 6-star Kruger. Alright. So I'm just gonna hang back here. He's maneuvering forward. Tank push strategy for his part, clearly. Actually, really, both of us are running tank pushes, more or less. Oh yeah, and the other thing is, I switched Light of Genesis back to Holy Light, Teleport, and Light's Embrace. Meanwhile, Florentia is debuffing my characters. And he takes the first action with Kruger, launching out an AoE. Dark Dragon's Breath. Very quickly, Florentia gets rid of that effect. And I sudden strike on purpose here. Because he has the opportunity to have both Elwin and Jugler jump in. So I have to make sure that I can actually heal up against that. So I take my act again here. He doesn't go in, so I don't need to use my attacks. And now Fresh Prince is going first. Works for me. So, both sides are continuing to just hold back. I am just waiting for his guard skills and so on to wear off. Right? Because next turn it wears off. So I'm waiting for him to either push in against me or for his guard skills to wear off. He's not maneuvering in. So means my opportunity is coming. He is faction buffing, refreshing all his characters. I'm doing the same thing. And I might as well start with Resounding Might. And Sudden Strike. So, as I said, I'm the one that's going to make the move first. So it's happening now. Dark Despair. Oh, side note, I've been playing 15-second turns this whole time now. So because I was spending time early on being pretty careful and figuring things out. So this is one of those things that show it. Like for example, Licorice could have been one tile further ahead, perhaps, to launch out the AoE to maybe damage Hilda as well. Right? I did not want to touch Jugler, but I think, I'm not sure I had the opportunity to hit an AoE that would not hit Jugler as well. Because I would have to be here, and Licorice only has 3 movement. So, ultimately, no way to hit Jugler, or no way to hit Hilda, but the AoE was launched to weaken a bit, and they also act again now. So, I have Bernhard jump in and launch out his Bash attack. Once again, not doing enough damage to one-shot. So if we go back a little, right? It did stun Hilda, but it didn't do what I wanted it to. So the next action then is to teleport Hilda forward and take off Hilda's first life. And there I chose to use Holy Light because I knew LoliJess would need to self-heal. So teleporting Hilda forward puts my characters into guard range still, and that way Light of Genesis could attack without any worries. Against the damaged Hilda, there was no way that Thorn's trigger would kill my Light of Genesis. He jumps in with Jugler. I need to heal up that damage first, so a mass heal. And trying to weaken Hilda, of course. So I start with my Hilda attacking. Doesn't really do quite enough damage. At the very least, the enemy Hilda was able to restore hit points with the crystal molders. Alright, so be it. So let's start smashing this Jugler instead. So Florentia wipes out all the werewolves between the Forest Priest and her own damage. And then all of the wolves heal up a bunch. And then Florentia will trigger and act again on my Licorice. Because... so, they AoE. My Florentia took a bunch of damage. So, I know I need to heal that up. Which is once again why I acted again Licorice. And there's the heal. Alright. So, there wasn't really a good way for me to heal there. No matter what, one character would have been missed out on that heal. It was a choice between either Florentia getting missed out or Hilda getting missed out. And I felt it was more important to heal my tank. So, targeted Hilda, Florentia is down to 1,000 hit points. Elwin, Reign of Glory, Sword Soul Strike. And it fails to one-shot. Because of the Defender of the People trigger. So, with the armor trigger, Hilda tanks the hit successfully. Did not lose the life. 30% chance of triggering. It did. Hilda lives. Alright. Bernhard finishes off the Jugler, or I thought. Not quite. This Jugler survived with a tiny bit of hit points. So, my Bernhard seems to need slightly bettering chance. Right? So, Jugler lived. With not too much hit points. Alright. But, interestingly enough, the buff got removed, right? Because he only had 5 buffs, right? There was no faction buff for Jugler. So the buff that was stripped by Bernhard ended up being the you cannot move buff. And due to that, LoliJess could shift that back and finish off Jugler. But yeah, I was really surprised he lived. In any case, down goes Jugler, and a little bit of healing to Hilda. So we're now looking at a situation where now my Hilda loses the first life. And plus revives. So start weakening the enemy Hilda. Still trying to set up a situation where LoliJess can strike. And I screw up big time here, right? As I said, my turns have been capped at like 15 seconds per turn right now, right? So I had a choice where my strategic regroup, if I healed on Bernhard, would have healed Florentia. But I didn't do that. I targeted Hilda. And so Florentia didn't get any healing. Whoops. So that probably would have healed Florentia back to full, as a side note. So the time constraints is starting to pressure me. He continues to buff up. And now Bernhard jumps in. Striking Hilda. Not enough damage to one-shot once again. Not against a full hit point Hilda anyways. But there is no healing from Liana. Because I waited till Liana acted before I move in. So, Bernhard strike. LoliJess finish. And Florentia actually got a decent amount of healing there. So Florentia's had a good amount of hit points. Once again, 78%. So it's actually currently 5 against 3. And first AoE hit from Kruger. Bunch of debuffs. Cannot be healed applied onto Florentia. She's dead. Yeah. Everyone else can live, but Florentia is basically dead. Alright. Mass heal. Dispels a lot of debuffs. Kruger gets an act again from Liana. So I tried to have Bernhard strike Kruger, and once again, Kruger lives. Tanks the hit from my Bernhard successfully. So, yeah. I've been seeing a lot of the enemies survive, avoid getting one-shotted over and over again. Right? So, this survival, though, was because I didn't apply the 20% defense reduction. Right? The gospel was what kept him alive here. Because if he had 20% less defense, he was dead. But due to gospel providing immunity to all debuffs, he tanked the hit. Yeah. So that was the impact there. The gospel effect coming into play. So as a result, Kruger gets the opportunity to launch out the second AoE. And down goes Florentia. Everyone gets heavily damaged. And his Elwin has not acted yet. Oh yes, and my Rupture didn't activate. Good point, Shadowed Light. I cannot use passive skills on me. Yes, so there was no Rupture as well, because because Bernhard got debuffed with cannot use passive skills. So some bad RNG occurring there with the debuffs, but that is part of facing Kruger. All right, LoliJess attack does no real damage to Kruger, right? So much for killing Kruger here. Provide some healing. That's about all I can do as a result. And Hilda tanks the hits from Elwin, killing Kruger, but she got poisoned and killed herself. So due to this poison of 20% damage, she's also dead. So her attack at least takes out Kruger, but she dies. And then now, Elwin takes out Bernhard. Suddenly, from 5v3, it's 2v2! Alright. So some bad RNG, some bad RNG against Kruger. Suddenly, because Kruger got to launch at the double AoE, things have become 2v2, where I'm facing against Elwin and Liana with Licorice and Light of Genesis. Alright. Licorice will Dark Despair. And the RNG play. Mobility debuff on Liana. Liana can no longer get to safety. Before that, Liana did have 3 movement, so she could have potentially moved down here to this tile. There was no way she was moving into the tile Licorice was on, but she had a chance of moving into this tile here. But due to Dark Despair mobility debuffing Liana, RNG turned against Fresh Prince. Now his Liana is dead. So her final action is to heal up Elwin and die. And now I have to try to bring as much health onto Light of Genesis as possible. So I purposely have her teleport on the Breath of Life tile to self-heal from the tile. And then she attacks to do some damage to Elwin and to get some more healing. So with that, and then the Holy Light providing healing as well, she's brought back up to 80%. So SP Elwin manages to heal up to very high as well, but does not do enough damage to kill me. Right? Because he managed to get a 20% health restoration buff from Liana before she died, Elwin healed up a lot. But Elwin not having the faction buff meant that it didn't do enough damage to kill LoliJess. So, attack number 1 from Licorice. Attack number 2 from LoliJess takes down SP Elwin's first life. And once again, Breath of Life tiles, keeping my LoliJess reasonably healthy. Right. He can only heal up 20% because he can only move to 1 tile. And thus, Elwin kills himself for my victory. Yep. This was a battle where the RNG definitely flowed back and forth. Right? But ultimately, big plays there. So, Licorice ended up being my major healer, right? Florentia died pretty early, so her healing didn't really kick in all that much. As for damage dealing, of course LoliJess, because LoliJess got so many kills. Bernhard did a good amount though. Yeah, this was one of the better matches I've had for sure. But wow, talk about frustrating. Everything on this Fresh Prince account took 2 hits for me to kill. Like, it was just, I was just amazed. When that Kruger survived, I was just like, what the heck? How did Kruger survive Bernhard? But, no. Between the passive disable and the gospel, that explained it pretty well. So yeah, overall though, you know, switching to this kind of box is working out for me pretty darn well. Most of the time, I don't get to play Florentia, but there are situations where I do end up getting to play Florentia, like that last match. So it's working out pretty well for me because even if I don't have a dedicated healer, you know, LoliJess can attack and heal. Hobo can attack and heal. Zerida and Akaya can kind of get healing. Zerida with her faction buff, Akaya from whenever the wolves die. Ares can self-heal by using his 3C. You know, Jugler can provide healing to other characters whenever he takes damage. So, despite not having dedicated healers, this is generally sufficient to do well. Unless I massively screw up, like I did against Clotaire. And yeah, so that's it for this video. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you found this series interesting. I certainly found it interesting that I could switch to a box like this and still succeed. Alright, so on that final point, Nitro out.